Okay, I've opened it up. So yeah, a few participants coming in already.
Okay, thank you.
Got to get my coffee.
I think it's now opened up, so we'll have to see people kind of trickling in now. We'll just give it 30 seconds or so to let numbers up a little bit, and then we'll kick off. So I can see the numbers have slowed down a little bit. Okay, so I'll happily kick off. Welcome everybody, happy Friday. Welcome to this briefing webinar for our recently launched development grant funding competition. Thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time today to talk through the competition details and to answer any questions you might have. My name is Claire Canning. I'm one of the programme managers for the Offshore Wind Growth Partnership, specifically looking at the grant funding programme. So I'll be sort of hosting the session today. Really delighted to have special guests with us today. We've got Tom Nightingale, who is a UK supply chain lead at Equinor, and is also the chair of our industry reference group from the Offshore Wind Industry Council. So Tom will be giving us a little bit of an introduction to the Offshore Wind Industry Council, or OWG, and their role in supporting the Offshore Wind Growth Partnership. In terms of housekeeping, the session should run for no longer than an hour, hopefully, will not run over, and it will be recorded. So you will receive a link of the recording probably on Monday, and it'll also be added to the website as well. And I'll add the slide deck to the website, so that should be circulated to everybody who's registered. I'd like to really encourage people to use the Q&A function on Zoom. So if you go down to the little bar, there's chat and there's Q&A function. So please feel free to put in questions, and we'll come to those hopefully 10-15 minutes at the end. Tom's able to stay for the duration of the session, so if there is any little questions you've got for him, hopefully you can answer. So without further ado, I'm just going to kick off. This is our agenda for today. I'm going to quickly give an introduction to the growth partnership and then pass over to Tom to talk about OWG, and then we'll get a little bit more into the funding business transformation programs that we offer, and then the details of the call. So many of you have probably seen this slide before. I should probably try to jazz it up a little bit, but for anybody that is brand new to the growth partnership, and looking for a bit of information, essentially this is a programme that was set up back in 2019 off the back of the offshore wind sector deal, and it is a mechanism really to help UK supply chain companies to grow and improve their competitiveness within the offshore wind sector. So the programme itself is funded by OWG, and Tom will cover this. So basically the OWG is a membership of developers that are building projects in the UK, and providing that funding into OWGP directly to support supply chain growth. And it is delivered by the Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult. So I actually work for Rory Catapult. This will be my 7th year, but my role is 100% focused on delivering the Offshore Wind Growth Partnership. Essentially, it's been set up to do kind of 4 key things. We're looking to increase UK content in UK offshore wind projects, increasing economic value, jobs and GBA, increasing UK IP embedded in the supply chain, and looking to increase exports to global markets as well. And the way that we do that is with the budget that we've been allocated from OWG, which is a sort of high-level figure of £100 million over 10 years. We do 2 key things, and I'll talk about these in a little bit more detail, but we do business transformation, which is essentially providing access to structured support programmes to help companies grow and addressing barriers to growth, and we do grant funding as well, so providing investment into companies to develop new products and enhancing capacity and capability within the sector. So that, in a nutshell, that's what the growth partnership is. I'm just going to pass over now to Tom to tell us a little bit about OWG and their involvement in OWGP. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Claire, and great to be here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Offshore Wind Industry Council, but first of all, I'll just explain my role. So at Equinor, I am the UK Supply Chain Leader, which is a new role that's been created recently. Before that, I was the Stakeholder Manager for Dogger Bank Wind Farm, and you can see behind me the operations and maintenance base for the world's largest offshore wind farm, in which Equinor is a partner. So it's great to be based out in one of the clusters, actually, and that's a really important part about the work that the Offshore Wind Industry Council does. If you move on to the next slide, please, Claire. So the Offshore Wind Industry Council brings together government and industry and was established actually over 10 years ago now. And the idea is to drive forward the development of a world-leading offshore wind sector in the UK. It was recognised that the UK was really leading in offshore wind, and that government and industry needed to work together to make sure that continued, and that is how the Offshore Wind Industry Council was formed. The council oversees and drives implementation of Offshore Wind Sector Deal, which was in 2019, and that has with it quite a lot of governance, which includes co-chairs from both industry and the UK Minister of State for Energy Security and Net Zero. So the idea is to bring together industry policymakers and other stakeholders to try and shape the industry. It's all about collaboration, and it's all about working together to meet the UK's targets for 2030 and beyond. Next slide, please, Claire. So the way that OWIC works is a lot of the team behind it are part of Renewable UK. So Jane Cooper leads the OWIC delivery team now within Renewable UK, and there's 6 main groups that they look after. So supply chain and clusters, aviation and radar, innovation, offshore transmission, pathways to growth, and people and skills. And these were all set up at the start of the Offshore Wind Industry Council. But there is a 7th one. Obviously, you'll see that there's 7 there, not 6. And that is the Offshore Wind Growth Partnership. But the Offshore Wind Growth Partnership works slightly differently because it's set up as a separate group with its own board as well. And all of these different work streams are to drive the key deliverables under the sector deal around these areas. So they're managed by OWIC, which obviously is a collection of both industry, government and other stakeholders. Next slide, please, Claire. So when the Offshore Wind Growth Partnership was developed, it has its board, which I mentioned previously, which has had a few changes to it recently because it's been going for quite a long time now. So there's been some new board members join recently. But it's made up in terms of the reference group that I lead to include 1 representative from every OWIC member company, which isn't just developers like Equinor. It actually includes supply chain companies and the OEMs as well. And we meet together before every Offshore Wind Growth Partnership board meeting, which is 5 per year usually. And our aim is from a developer and supply chain perspective to support the Offshore Wind Growth Partnership in a few ways, through things like providing our aligned perspective on where the UK supply chain needs to move forward. And a lot of us recently supported the supply chain capability analysis, which was a joint deliverable from both the OWGP and OWIC. And we also can try and help identify companies from our own supply chains that could benefit from the OWGP interventions. We can also get involved with reviewing work from the OWGP where appropriate, and as part of our meetings we go through all of the different plans that the OWGP have over the next 2 to 3 months and further beyond into the future as well. And we can also try and bring in resources from our different organisations to support different activities as well. We also all try to support the Spotlight event, and there's now been 2 Spotlight events in December 2023 and December 2022, and Equinor was a sponsor of the first one. And these are really important events to bring together all of the amazing companies that have benefited from not just OWGP, but also interventions from the Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult. And then just finally, some of our KPIs, we're trying to set ourselves some targets. So the different members of the reference group aim to support the Offshore Wind Growth Partnership by helping to identify industry gaps, by providing referrals, by inviting OWIC to our OWGP to the OWIC member events. So, for example, various different supply chain events that Dogger Bank has run have featured Offshore Wind Growth Partnership. We can also bring the Offshore Wind Growth Partnership into our businesses to provide awareness of what they do across broader parts of our organisation. And we also aim to engage with the different supply chain companies that come through the different programmes as well. Okay, thanks, Claire, back to you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Tom. I think it's really useful to set that scene because we quite often get questions from companies to better understand what the relationship is between growth partnership and industry and how it's all connected. So I think that has been really helpful. And you mentioned about how the Industry Council can help provide insight into maybe market failures and gaps where OWGP interventions are best suited. And I guess I'll be able to touch on that a little bit in talking about the scope of the competition. So if you have any questions for Tom, do put them in the Q&A and we can cover them at the end. So just to give a quick overview of our programme, so I mentioned that the Growth Partnership does sort of two key activities. Currently we do grant funding and business transformation. So to give you a sort of high level overview of the types of funding we do two types of competitions. One is the development grants, which is open just now, which is the focus of today's webinar, where we provide grants of up to £500,000. And this competition is typically for quite transformative projects that's going to help deliver a step change in growth for businesses in the UK. So typically this competition tends to be relatively open scope. If you've got a product or a technology or service that has application in offshore wind and you're looking to transition from an adjacent sector, or if you're looking to grow that business, if you're already an existing supplier looking to grow, then potentially you would be eligible to submit into this competition, but I will cover the eligibility criteria. And then we also do what we call innovation grants as well, which are slightly smaller grants, more focused towards, I would say, technology development, so bringing kind of innovations and game-changing solutions into the sector. The way that we've run innovation grants previously is that we've had sort of industry sponsors to help focus or target those industry kind of innovation challenges. So the last competition that we ran was focused on improving reliability and solutions for decarbonising the offshore wind sector. So they tend to have more of a dedicated scope to particular innovation challenges or industry priorities. I put some logos there to highlight some of the companies that we've supported. So far we've got 86 projects on the grant funding portfolio, which is fantastic. And yeah, so looking to grow that quite a bit this year as we've got more funding competitions in the pipeline. And to complement the grant funding, we do business transformation programs as well. And that's primarily run by my colleague Lynn McIntosh-Grieve and Matt Brown on the business support side. So we do three types of business support program or business transformation. One is the Wind Expert Support Toolkit, which is a sort of entry level or foundation level support program that can provide access to specialist advice, market intelligence and insight for companies that might be new to the sector or that are looking to grow their business in the sector. So it's about kind of matchmaking companies up with specialist consultants that have very sort of domain specific knowledge in offshore wind. West is sort of open on a rolling basis, so we're always kind of actively looking for companies to participate in that program, and we're now supporting we have supported over 150 activities on that. Sharing and growth is a long-term business transformation program that has been adapted from the aerospace sector, and it's really about kind of embedding experts within your company and helping to drive business change and business growth, to help with organisational improvements. And we have 14 companies on that programme at the moment. And then Fit for Offshore Renewables, which some of you may be familiar with, is a programme that's delivered by Catapult, but OWGP is funding the national Fit for programme, which currently has 14 companies on its portfolio. And we're actually looking to launch another national Fit for programme this year. We got approval from the board in December, which is really exciting. So more details to follow on that. And if you get any questions on any of the business support programmes, do get in touch with my colleagues there for the contact details. And I just wanted to highlight some of the impact that the Growth Partnership has had in the last sort of 4.5 years that it's been operating. We've had over 270 projects supported across the 2 programmes. And I mentioned that what we're looking to do is create economic growth and recognise impact by the growth that companies are able to have as a result of being supported by OWGP. So we record things like jobs, exports, turnover, and IP. So we've been able to, from companies that have been reporting on impact, we have counted an increased jobs of 724 and £113 million in revenue growth, which is quite staggering actually. So it's really encouraging and motivating to see the impact that companies are recognising from OWGP interventions. And I've put just some examples of companies that have participated in the funding programme on the top right there. But to dive a little bit deeper into the current competition, which is why you are here. So development grants, just to give you a sort of high-level overview, it's really about helping companies to increase their growth. It's about helping to improve competitiveness and increase capability within the supply chain. We are really focused on projects that are going to deliver, as I mentioned, that increase in jobs, increase in IP, turnover and exports, and that are going to be able to deliver that impact by 2030. So we're looking to fund projects that are kind of ready to commercialise or near commercialisation, so that it can start generating impact within the next few years, and we can start tracking that impact. Projects within development grants can be either CapEx or OpEx, or a mix of both. So we have funded projects where companies are looking to invest in new equipment that might be help to increase their service capacity or capability, for example, manufacturing facilities, or it can be OpEx focused as well. So if you're looking to develop new products and services. The competition pot available is £2 million, and we are able to award between £50,000 and £500,000 for projects up to 2 years in duration. So if anybody's familiar with the programme, it's a very similar format to previous development grant competitions, with the exception that we are really trying to be a little bit more targeted in our approach, where we invest in supply chain. So within the scope, we're looking for projects that are going to unlock growth in one of the 9 high-value supply chain areas, focus areas that have been identified in recent industry analysis. And I've got here the UK supply chain capability analysis, which was a piece of work commissioned by the Offshore Wind Growth Partnership and the Offshore Wind Industry Council last year, to look at where the UK supply chain has strengths. So where are the strengths, where are the gaps, and where should we be targeting interventions to unlock the best economic value in the UK. So the analysis, and I've put a link to it here because I think it's, if you haven't read it, it's a really excellent piece of analysis, and is helping our thinking about where we're best to target our support programmes and our funding. But essentially, the analysis highlighted 9 high-value UK strengths that I've listed here on the right-hand side. And so what we would quite like to do is have our competition sort of focused on these areas that will help unlock high-value growth opportunities in the UK. And as you can see, I mean, it's fairly broad. It does probably cover, I would say, the majority or broad spectrum of supply chain in the UK. But within the application, we really want to tease out from companies how they best align with one of these focus areas and give them an opportunity to kind of describe that. So that will help us make a decision as to whether we should invest in that project or not. So, I mean, I'll not go through these individually, but as I mentioned, it does kind of cover all aspects, or broadly most aspects of supply chain, including floating wind. So if anybody was interested in the last competition that we funded, we had almost half of the projects awarded. We're looking at floating wind enabling technology and improved manufacturing methods to support floating wind fabrication. So that's something that we're also exploring as well. So yes, do have a look at the analysis, and there's more details in the scope and guidance document in the call around these areas. But essentially, looking for projects that are going to help deliver a step change in growth within the supply chain. In terms of the type of activity that we're looking to fund, I've sort of touched on this already, but we're happy for projects that might be investing in equipment, investing in facilities. It might be looking at developing and implementing new processes that will help improve competitiveness. We're happy to invest in the development of technology, products and services that might be bringing something new to the market or addressing a gap in the market or an industry challenge. Just to reiterate again that I mentioned that we're looking to generate impact within a sort of defined timeline up into 2030. So any projects focusing on technology development should be near to market, ready for commercialization. If you have something that's at sort of concept level, you're looking to do proof of concept or kind of early stage project, probably the growth partnership is not for you, and I would be happy to signpost to other more suitable funding options, potentially through Innovate UK. Or any other activity that is going to really help to grow the company and generate that impact that we're seeking for 2030. And I think, yeah, taking us on to the eligibility criteria, I appreciate this is a really busy slide and I'm not going to go through everything, but just want to highlight a few things that to be an eligible applicant, you just need to be a UK registered company. It doesn't have to be an SME. It can be any size. And you don't need to be active in offshore wind. If you're looking to transition into offshore wind, that's fine. If you have something a product or a service that you think has a potential application in offshore wind, that's fine. We are not going to fund business as usual activity, so we're looking for projects that have a very distinct scope, and that would not happen really without external funding support. So we really want to understand what is the additionality of OWGP funding here. Is this something that the company would be doing anyway? And that's something that's we assess in the application. I've talked already about the supply chain capability analysis report and the focus areas there. So we do want the applicants to think about how their proposal aligns with those focus areas, at least one of those focus areas, and we'll give an opportunity to explain that or justify that within the application. If you are already in receipt of OWGP funding within the last 12 months, then you wouldn't be eligible to apply for this round. I think actually the only competition that applies to is the one that we launched in May last year that we've just awarded. So providing that you have not already received 3 or more OWGP funding awards, and you haven't just been awarded in the latest round, you would be eligible. And just for the avoidance of doubt, when I say receive 3 or more OWGP funding awards, I'm not talking about business transformation, I'm just purely talking about grants. We will accept resubmission. So if you have applied before and not been successful, you can resubmit once, providing that you take on board the feedback that has been provided from the previous competition. Of course, we're looking for companies to show their ambition for growth and the intent to increase their turnover, jobs, exports and IP. And we're also looking for companies to provide a match contribution of at least 50% and be able to demonstrate that ability as well. So I put an example here on the right hand side that in terms of what that match contribution might look like, it can be cash or in kind. So a sort of £500,000 project might include a £250,000 development grant matched with cash investment from the company and in-kind company contribution that brings that up to 50% intervention level. And when I say in-kind contribution, so that might be like time spent in the project, internal labour costs and things like that. We are also encouraging applications from companies that would consider the repayment of funds following any commercial successes that are generated as a result of the project. This would then enable us to reinvest funds back into future OWGP support programmes. So OWGP is a not-for-profit. Everything that we get in, we push back out. So if there's any interest in repaying back to OWGP, we would be delighted to consider that so that we can distribute it to future support programmes. Just to caveat, that's entirely at the discretion of the applicant and is not a condition of the funding award. But if it is of interest, please do indicate that in your application form. In terms of project team, so in addition to the lead organisation, who would be the main beneficiary of the funding, or the applicant, we're happy for lead applicants to have partners or collaborative projects as part of their submission. So we do encourage the inclusion of other organisations, so that might be other businesses, possible clients, so customers that will support that route to commercialisation, academic institutions, public sector organisations, RTOs and catapults. So if you are developing technology and you're looking to bring in specific delivery partners or expertise to help, that's fine. We obviously the focus of this is about supporting UK business and putting money into UK supply chain. We may consider overseas partners if that particular capability or expertise doesn't exist in the UK. So if you're looking to use an overseas company for whatever reason as a subcontractor, that would need to be very clearly justified in your application. And the way that our contracting structure works is that we would contract with the lead organisation only and allocate grant payments to the lead organisation, and then all project partners would be deemed as subcontractors to the lead organisation. So we wouldn't have separate like bilateral contracts with different project partners, like with Innovate UK, for example. We would just contract with the lead organisation. In terms of how to apply, people that have been through this process before may be familiar, but development grants tend to be a two-stage process. So this helps us to first of all manage the volume of applications, because it tends to be quite popular. It's quite a competitive call. It allows us to understand and determine eligibility early in the process. So we use stage 1 as a way of making sure that the eligibility criteria are fulfilled, and there is compelling motivation for that project before we would consider inviting back for a more detailed proposal. allows us to go back to applicants as early as possible in that process and let them know if they haven't been successful. And also then we can look at the kind of breadth of projects and the types of proposals being received, so we can identify the most appropriate assessors. So throughout this process, we use independent assessors as much as possible to help us determine which projects we should be awarding, which ones we should be taking through to the next stage. We are inviting stage 1 applicants to submit their submission by Friday 8th of March at 5 PM. So we opened it last week, so hopefully that gives enough time for people to submit. We'll review all the stage 1 applications and notify applicants by the 12th of April on the decision. If you have been successful in stage 1, we'll provide you with a template and a cost breakdown form and all the materials you would need to submit a stage 2. And then that was to be submitted by the 13th of May. We try to provide feedback wherever possible, so if you are successful or unsuccessful at stage 2, we'll try to give you detailed information on the scoring and assessor feedback as well to help with any future submissions. This is what the application form looks like. I've put all the links have been updated here, so that's all will take you to all the information you need. We recommend in the first instance that you download the scope and guidance document. It has everything you need to know before you kind of delve into the application form. At the moment, we're using Microsoft Forms for our applications, so there's a mix of text boxes, numerical and drop-down responses in there as well. The one issue we have with Microsoft Forms is at the moment we don't have the functionality for people to save their application and then go back to it. So I would recommend that you draft responses to the questions separately, like in a Word document, and then just paste them in to the form once you're ready to submit. All the questions can be found in the scope and guidance document as well. Once you submit the application, you'll get a confirmation email from us, and you'll also get a PDF version of your application as it's been submitted to us as well. On our website, we've now added the terms and conditions to the grant funding programme, so I've included them in a link, useful for people to see them in advance and understand what the expectations are around entering into a contract with OWGP for a grant funded project. And yeah, so this is a very busy slide, apologies, bear with me. But this basically shows the criteria for the stage 1 application questions and how it's broken down into different sections, and then the assessment weighting that's allocated to that section. If you've been through this process before, you'll see that it's been updated slightly, so we've got more sections and we've kind of added some additional questions in here. So I should say that there are 8 sections in total to the application form, but the first section is not assessed. So broken down the assessment into these 7 sections. First is around background to the business and any relevant experience. So what we're really looking to understand here is this a company that would be well suited to delivery in the offshore wind sector if they aren't already. Next question is all about the ambition for growth. So I mentioned that part of the eligibility criteria is to show a really clear intent to generate impact across the KPIs that we assess. So we really want that to come across in the application. What does that ambition for growth look like? What are your plans? What strengths do you have as a business that was going to enable you to be successful and unlock that growth potential? Then we want to understand a bit about the market opportunity or the business, the challenge that your project is addressing. So we want to see that you have a clear understanding of that challenge that you're addressing with the use of OWGP funding. This is an opportunity to really demonstrate the motivation for the project in line with the challenge identified. Within this section as well, we want you to consider how that market is developing, what are the structure and the dynamics of that market, and you know, make it clear how that project is a sustainable solution to underpin growth in that area that you're tackling. We've added in a section here around the how does the project align with the high value supply chain focus areas. You know, going forward, we're going to be more targeted towards industry priority areas as highlighted in the capability analysis. So this is your opportunity to really bring that to life and articulate how you're going to unlock growth in one of these key areas. Tell us about your project and how it will unlock business growth. So this is your opportunity to describe the project and what it will do. How are you going to deliver that project effectively and achieve the outputs? So yeah, we really want to understand what this project is, what are the kind of key activities or the milestones, and what tools and things do you have in place to ensure its effective delivery. Financial summary. So this is really important for us to understand the value for money and the additionality of OWGP funding. So we want the applicant to really outline project costs, provide a very clear breakdown and a justification for those proposed costs. We want to understand that this project is the most cost-effective method of addressing the challenge. And we want it to be really clear as to how is OWGP funding additional to what you'll be doing. So would this project not take place without external intervention? So a really critical part of the application in terms of justifying value for money. And the last section is really about impact across those 4 metrics that I've been harping on about throughout the webinar. So this is your opportunity to tell us what impact this project is going to have on your business. How is it going to deliver that growth, and any additional benefits or impacts that might, you know, come out of this project taking place. So, you know, things looking at environmental or sustainability or things like that. So yeah, so that in a nutshell is what we're assessing in stage 1. Stage 2 is very similar, but we'll dive into the detail a little bit deeper. We ask companies to submit a full business case and more detailed cost breakdown as well. That's just a note of the timeline. I think the only thing to highlight here is that we're trying to do this call a little bit quicker than we normally would. So typically between call launch and then actually awarding projects, that can take anything up to kind of 8-9 months. We're trying to shorten that process as much as we can without compromising making sure people have enough time to do a good submission and making sure we can assess effectively. We may, between the stage 2 application deadline and then applicants being notified, we may have interviews, so we should allow some time for interviews there as well for any kind of shortlisted projects. But essentially we're looking to start projects around August time. So if that doesn't align with your own timeline, if you're looking to develop something or if you're wanting to do something in particular and you need funding quickly, this might not be the best suited competition for you to apply to, because it can take a while to get to the award process. And this is a jazzy little timeline that we've got here that I think I've already kind of spoken to. On the left-hand side, this is the stage that we're at now, where the arrow is. We've just launched the call, and then we'll try, by the time we get to month sort of 6, 7, we'll be looking to onboard companies following successful contract execution. So that's a typical timeline for development grants. The this is the key steps, I guess, to submission. If you haven't already, please do register on the OWGP website. It means that you will be notified of any opportunities, whether it's through funding or business transformation programs. So if anything, we launch anything new, you'll be notified first. You'll also then get access to the OWGP newsletter, which we just started in January this year. So any interesting news or activities that we've been involved with, you'll be notified as well. Do review the scope and guidance document and paste some responses on a Word document before you apply. And then you can go ahead and submit the online application form. You'll know that it's been submitted properly because you'll get a confirmation email from us. I think that's pretty much everything on terms of assessment, and I kind of covered this already, but just to reiterate, we use external independent assessors to support the assessments of both stage 1 and stage 2. At both stage 1 and stage 2, the applications are summarised and presented to the OWGP board of directors. Tom mentioned there is an independent board, and we seek their approval before we can make any award. The process for stage 2 is slightly more rigorous, and yeah, we utilise the board to help us make the final award decisions. We provide feedback. In terms of what we expect from applicant, I guess there's nothing crazy here. We ask that companies provide an internal champion or project manager to be that key point of contact with OWGP in managing the project, ensuring that there's enough internal resource to deliver that agreed project. So before we would even get to the contract execution point, we would expect companies to submit a sort of detailed project management plan that highlights the activities and the resource that is going to be required. We would ask that companies report to us on successful results and major business milestones. You know, that's how we capture and track our impact, and you know, we like to be able to do case studies on companies wherever possible. And essentially just be ready to start your project in August and have your match funds in place to be able to do that. The funding will be paid as a grant on all eligible project costs net of VAT. I've added some do's and don'ts here that I'll just go through very quickly, and then we can move on to questions and answers. Some of these probably sounds a bit ridiculous. Ensure you're eligible, so do review the eligibility criteria prior to submitting. If there's anything that you're not sure about, just get in touch with me or the team, and we can help clarify that for you. Do make sure that your project costs are within the range for the competition. So, you know, we can only award between 50 to 500k. If your request is not within this range, it will be rejected straight away. So do just make sure the cost balance. Take me on to my next point. Make sure the finances are correct. You would be surprised how many applications we get that the costs don't add up, which can be quite frustrating. So do make sure that these are all aligned across all the different budget lines. I've mentioned about the option to repay. If you are anticipating any changes to the company during the timeline of the project, do let us know. You know, if there's going to be any kind of rebranding or an acquisition or anything like that. It's useful for us to know upfront before we go down that kind of contracting route. KPI alignment is really important. I mean, this is something that our board are obsessed with. You know, how's a project going to create jobs and turnover and things like that. So that's a critical part of the assessment criteria, and market understanding. So we want to be really clear that the applicants really understands the market area that they're looking to enter, they're looking to grow in, and how to best exploit this to unlock growth opportunities. And wherever possible, do provide quantification of market size and dynamics. Things that we would suggest not to do: don't submit an application if you don't meet the eligibility criteria. You know, we've spoken about that. I've mentioned the the proposals would need to be a defined scope and not business as usual activity. Resubmissions we can only accept once. On the costs, quite often we just get, it feels like, rounded up numbers. So please do ensure that the numbers that you provide in terms of financials are accurate, and that you'd be able to provide evidence of these. For example, labour costs, if we see, you know, what we would consider very high rates, we may ask you to provide evidence that those costs are real. And submitting costs without justification, you've already explained that. For stage one, I don't think I did touch on this, we're not needing any additional material, so quite often we get applicants looking to submit letters of support and appendices and things with the submission. We don't require this for stage one, but if you are shortlisted to submit stage 2 business case, you will have an opportunity to send supporting material with this, and letters of support, things like that. We've talked about overseas partners and subcontractors. Please just let us know in advance if that's the case, and make sure that the rationale is clear. And the KPIs, so obviously this is an important part of the assessment process, but please make sure they're realistic and achievable, because when we contract with a company, this is how we report our impact back to OWG and our funders and our stakeholders. So we want to make sure that the forecast growth opportunities are realistic, they align with the market opportunity, and that it's in line with the ambition. So great to see you know, an ambitious forecast and an ambition for growth, but yeah, we don't want to see inflated numbers. And really, that's everything that I wanted to cover. I feel that you're probably sick of hearing my voice for the last 45 minutes or so, but we've got, I would say, 10 minutes for questions. I can see that there has been some questions in the chat, and I'm happy to go through those. So thanks for bearing with me. I'm just going to rattle these off. I'm not sure if there's any there for you, Tom, but I can see the first one. Can we apply for support funding as a single SME? Yes. And can we apply jointly with our partner companies? So we would only accept one submission from one lead applicant. So if you're looking to bid in on your own, that's fine. If you were looking to be part of another bid, that would be fine, but you couldn't be the lead applicant on both. And there would need to be kind of very clear distinction between the two projects, that they're not funding the same activities. So that would need to be very clear. SCCA, good piece of work. Will you consider applications which don't fit in the 9 SCCA target areas? I would say no, because that is the scope of this particular competition. We're trying to be more aligned with industry analysis, and going forwards, I think that we'll be doing that more and more. If you're unsure if your proposal or whatever your project ideas, if you're unsure that it doesn't fit within one of these target areas, do let me know, and I'm happy to chat about it. But if it isn't clearly aligned, the chances are it's just not going to score well within the scoring criteria for this particular competition. Can a company apply for funding for phase 2 of a development that funding was provided for phase 1? So if I've read that correctly, OWGP has funded phase 1 of a project that has been completed and now is seeking funding for an additional phase. I would say so. I think wouldn't see an issue with that, providing it sort of ticks the boxes of what we're looking to achieve. The only thing that there may be an issue with is if that phase 1 funding already came from OWGP and there was some KPIs, matched growth KPIs that were provided in that phase 1 portion. I'd be interested to see how that differs in phase 2, and if we might see sort of diminishing returns as a result of a second intervention for the same project. I think I wouldn't say no. I think it should be fine, but we just need to make clear what the additional impact would be of OWGP funding a further phase. I'm not sure if that's clear, but just send me an email, or happy to have a call if I'm not giving you the answers that you need. We are an offshore wind supply chain company based outside of the UK. By setting up a new UK company before we apply, will we be eligible? Yes, but it's not just about the postcode of where your business is registered, it's about where the activity of the project takes place. So we want to make sure that the project takes place in the UK, that that the impact will be generated in the UK and the benefits will be realised in the UK. So fine to use an address in the UK, but it would need to be very clear where that project activity was taking place and where the impact would be generated. And then we've got Dorian Parker has offered some support on grant writing and provided the details there. Do collaborative projects involving a few suppliers working together to realise mutually beneficial growth fit this competition? The guidance refers to a sole applicant with delivery partners plus the subcontractors, which is different. Yes, so we don't have the infrastructure set up at the moment to fund collaborative projects, and that we would have agreements with multiple partners. So while we support collaborative projects in the sense of the word, it would need to be one lead applicant with subcontractors. But I think there's still a case to be made in the application. If this is UK companies working together to have this mutually beneficial growth, I think it's important to tease that out in the application. But it would still need one lead applicant. And the agreement there would just need to be separate agreements in place with that lead applicant, what the kind of the budget would be for these other different project partners and what the intervention level would be. Can the match funding be in the form of providing personnel to the project at no cost to the company? So for matched contribution, it can be internal resource that you're committing. So, internal labour and time spent. That's what you mean, that's fine. I'm not sure on that one. But yeah, cash or in-kind contribution. Are funds available upfront or reimbursed? Oh, that's a really good point. I should have covered that. We would make grant payments in arrears based on evidence of deliverables being achieved and evidence of expenditure. So typically what would happen is we would have kind of milestones that align with claim payment milestones. We would have a review meeting with the company. We would see evidence of the progress being made and evidence that money is being spent, and then we would pay in arrears. What I will say to that, previously we have had arrangements with some companies depending on the nature of the project. For example, if it's a CapEx project, they're looking to invest in equipment. If some upfront grant is needed to allow that order to be made, we can make exceptions on a case-by-case basis. is there preference for applications relating to fixed bottom versus floating? I wouldn't say there's a preference, and providing that it's clear that the impact can be generated before 2030. I think sometimes this can be the challenge we have with let's say floating projects, because it could be anything to do with floating, but you know, some tech proposals that we get that are targeted towards floating might be quite early stage, and therefore OWGP impact is not going to be generated within the time scales that we require. So there's a balance there to make sure that we're funding something that aligns with, you know, the high value supply chain areas, but making sure that it's achievable within the timescales for OWGP. So I wouldn't say there's a preference. It depends what you're looking to do and the impact. If using a catapult facility for testing as part of a project, would we simply treat these as subcontractor from a finance costing perspective? Yes. Yes, that would just be a regular subcontracting agreement. And then in terms of the evidence that you would submit to support a claim, that would be, you know, a copy of an invoice or something like that from whatever facility or subcontractor. The product needs support with is at too early development stage for this fund. I have looked at Innovate UK grants and are suitable. Where can I get further advice? It's a good question. I think within Catapult, we have a team of people looking at various different funding mechanisms and how we can best signpost people to the most appropriate support. So I'm happy if you want to reach out to me with a little bit more detail on what you're looking to do. And we can try and signpost you to any relevant funding. Yeah, or I can signpost you certainly to my colleagues at Catapult. I think I might have answered all of these questions, and we're just coming to, oh no, one at the bottom. Oh no, sorry, I have covered them all, I think. If I haven't, if there's anything that hasn't been covered in today's session, please do drop me a note. If I'm not available, Tom Speedy, the grant funding project manager, can help answer any questions, or any of the team. I'll make sure that you've got access to my contact details and the general mailbox. I'll try and collate an additional FAQ from the questions that have been asked today and submit that along with the slides and the recording to the session. I think that's everything. Sorry, it was quite a long session for you, Tom. You didn't get any specific. I thought you might get some difficult questions about OWGP, but you got off lightly there. So I think I'm happy to close today's session, and I really thank everybody so much for your time and for listening to me go on and on for 45 minutes. Special thanks to Tom for giving us an introduction. I think that was really helpful. And really looking forward to some good submissions to the competition. So yeah, do get in touch if you have any questions, and enjoy the rest of your Friday. Thank you very much.